OS people have never heard of these movies, yet they're some of the most powerful sci-fi apocalypse films of recent years. If you think you've already seen every great science fiction movie, this list will quickly prove you wrong. I've selected 10 underrated sci-fi hidden gems that explore the end of the world, technology, and the future of humanity in smart, unconventional, and often disturbingly realistic ways. These films don't rely on explosions. They stay with you long after they end. Watch until the very end, because the last movie is a true hidden gem that deserves far more attention. We start with number 10. The Last Journey of Paul W.R. The world is already ending when this story begins. Earth is slowly losing its ability to sustain life, and humanity's last hope rests on a desperate mission into space. Paul W.R., a skilled astronaut and reluctant hero, is chosen to carry out a final journey that could determine the fate of the planet. As he travels through abandoned landscapes and forgotten outposts, the film reveals a quiet, broken world where survival is no longer about fighting, but about acceptance. Memories, loss, and unfinished relationships weigh as heavily as the mission itself. The Last Journey of Paul W.R. is not a loud disaster movie. It's a melancholic road movie set at the end of civilization, focused on solitude, responsibility, and the emotional cost of being the last one who can still make a difference. If technology can become a tool of rebellion and freedom, the next question is what happens when it begins to interfere with something even more personal. Dreams. Number 9. Strawberry Mansion. The story takes place in the near future, in a world where the government taxes dreams. The main character works as a dream auditor and visits people to check if they are honestly accounting for their nighttime visions. During one of his routine checks, he ends up at the home of an elderly woman who has been recording her dreams on videotapes for years. Immersing himself in her dreamlike archive, the man gradually loses the boundary between reality and dreams, and his own emotions and memories begin to take control. Strawberry Mansion uses surrealism, analog aesthetics, and absurdity to tell a story about love, loneliness, and a world dominated by consumption and surveillance. It is a melancholic, at times strange journey into the human imagination, where dreams become the last space of freedom. After a world where even dreams are controlled, we move closer to everyday life, where technology is no longer abstract, but part of the family. Number 8. After Yang. It all begins with silence, which appears where there used to be daily routine. In the world of the near future, androids are completely normal, part of family life and the emotional landscape. One such family is raising an adopted daughter with the help of Yang, an android who acts as an older brother and cultural guide. When Yang suddenly stops working, a seemingly minor malfunction turns into a painful experience of loss. The girl's father, trying to repair him, discovers fragments of memories stored in the android. Ordinary moments, glances, thoughts, and emotions that were never spoken. After Yang is a film about grief, memory, and the fragility of relationships, asking whether humanity really depends on biology, or rather on the ability to feel, remember, and be important to others. And if machines can already play an emotional role within a family, the next step feels inevitable. Technology begins to interfere with the very source of life. Number 7. The Pod Generation. Imagine a world where decisions about love, parenthood, and biology are made like choosing a new app. This is the reality for a young married couple who are faced with a modern alternative to pregnancy. A child can develop in a portable technological device completely outside the human body. At first, the solution seems ideal, convenient, and in line with the spirit of progress. But over time, technology begins to affect emotions, relationships, and feelings of closeness. The differences in worldview between the partners grow, and questions about the nature of motherhood, control, and responsibility become increasingly uncomfortable. The film The Pod Generation balances between satire and reflection, showing a future in which progress promises freedom, but at the same time puts what is most human to the test. When technology begins to decide how life is created, it raises an even darker question. What happens when humanity loses control, not just over birth, but over its entire future? Number 6. Aniara. What begins as a routine space journey quickly turns into a nightmare without an exit. A massive spacecraft carrying thousands of people from an uninhabitable Earth to Mars is knocked off course after an accident. With no way to return and no clear destination ahead, the passengers realize they are drifting endlessly into deep space. Days turn into months, hope slowly erodes, and the promise of rescue becomes a distant illusion. As supplies run out and the future grows increasingly abstract, society aboard the ship begins to fracture. Religion, escapism, violence, and despair fill the void left by purpose. Aniara is not about survival in the traditional sense. It is a devastating meditation on meaning, denial, and what happens to humanity when there is no future left to believe in. Cold, emotional, and deeply unsettling, this film stays with you long after it ends. After such a monumental and distant vision of humanity's end, we return to something deeply personal. To relationships. Number 5. I'm Your Man. The scientific experiment begins as a polite formality, but quickly turns into an emotional test of limits. A cultural researcher agrees to live with a humanoid android for several weeks, programmed to perfectly respond to her emotional, intellectual, and romantic needs. The machine learns her moods, tastes, and fears, offering perfect support and unconditional attention. Over time, however, the question arises as to whether such a relationship is a comfortable illusion or a real feeling. The protagonist begins to confront her own loneliness, past losses, and how much compromise real intimacy requires. The film I'm Your Man combines subtle humor with melancholy, asking whether love must be imperfect to be authentic and what really makes a human relationship. When the line between intimacy and illusion begins to blur, the next encounter becomes far more disturbing. Number 4. Significant Other. Something about this relationship has been off from the start, though it takes a long time to pinpoint exactly what it is. The couple goes on a secluded trip to a wild, remote area, hoping for rest and intimacy. Instead, tension, minor misunderstandings, and a growing sense of danger arise. When a brutal attack occurs in the forest, the situation spirals out of control and reality begins to crack. What seemed like a classic survival story gradually reveals a much more disturbing truth about identity, trust, and alien intelligence. Significant Other cleverly combines thriller, horror, and science fiction, playing with the viewer's expectations. Beneath the layer of tension lies a story about the fear of intimacy, control, and how little we know about the person right next to us. After a story where the threat comes from the outside, the next film explores a conflict born quietly inside love itself. Number 3. Swan Song. The secret that the protagonist carries within himself slowly begins to supplant everything else. Illness is not a source of drama here, but rather a backdrop for a decision that breaks love down into its constituent parts. There is a possibility that pain will never touch the family, that everyday life will continue without disruption, without mourning, without farewells. However, the price is absolute, because it means giving up one's place in the world to someone perfectly similar. Every moment of closeness turns into an internal conflict between the need to be with them and the desire to spare them suffering. This story does not seek easy emotions or dramatic twists. Instead, it calmly observes how love can lead to a decision in which saving others means completely erasing oneself. This is the quiet and painful path that Swan Song shows us. If love can lead to complete self-erasure, an even more brutal question follows. What if someone were created to replace us against our will? Number 2. Duel. Death ceases to be the end here and becomes a logistical problem. A woman learns that she is terminally ill, so she decides to undergo a procedure to create her perfect clone, who will take over her life, relationships, and place in the world after her death. When the diagnosis turns out to be wrong, the situation spirals out of control. The clone cannot simply disappear, and the law allows only one solution. Both versions of the same person are forced to prepare for a duel to the death. Training, emotions, and rivalry reveal differences that were not supposed to exist. The story balances between black humor and existential anxiety, asking whether the copy is really you and who deserves to continue existing. This cold, absurd experiment is Duel, which hides a brutal reflection on identity, fear, and the instinct for survival beneath the surface of a simple idea. And now the film I saved for last, the quietest, the most restrained, and the most disturbing of them all. Number 1. The Artifice Girl. At first, it looks like just another tech project designed to help fight crime. A group of agents and scientists are testing advanced artificial intelligence in the form of a young girl, created to catch online predators. The system works surprisingly well, and its development quickly begins to exceed its original assumptions. Over the years, the technology matures, changes form, and begins to ask questions that its creators are not ready for. The line between a tool and a conscious being becomes increasingly blurred, and decisions made in the name of security lead to ethical consequences on a global scale. The Artifice Girl is an intimate science fiction film based on dialogue and ideas which, instead of special effects, offers a disturbing reflection on power, responsibility, and the moment when the creation of intelligence ceases to be under human control.